Hi folks, Ricky Tang here, and I am finally riding, courtesy of Frasers Motorcycles of Gloucester. Thank you folks. I am finally riding the Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello, a bike I've been looking forward to riding for several months now. And this is just my first few miles on the bike, just getting an initial feel for it. No sooner as I start to get myself acquainted with the world of Moto Guzzi, having only ridden my first ever Moto Guzzis this year with the V7 Stone and the V85 TT, then the company comes up with a whole brand new platform in order to modernise their offerings. Let's talk about the ergonomics first of all. The riding position is somewhat touring oriented in my humble opinion. The handlebars are quite high and close to you. Certainly a far cry from what you get on the BMW R1250 RS, the faired version. They kind of have high handlebars, relatively speaking, but they're kind of clip-on styled. They're certainly a bit more further forward and lower than what you find with this bike. So yeah, the riding position feels rather compact for me. Not too stretched out, well, not stretched out at all, considering I am just 5'7" or 170 centimeters with a 32-inch inside leg. Talking of legs, the seat feels quite low. I think it's 815 millimeters is the seat height standard. And the legs, let me kind of show you what's happening down there, hopefully. So they are not swept back really to any great degree, only 10 degrees or so. So the knees are not cramped, at least my knees aren't cramped. So I'm finding the riding position quite agreeable. In terms of the controls, we do have span adjustable brake and clutch levers. We have a pretty strong back brake as well, which is impressive, especially at slower speeds. It kind of hauls you up quite quickly just on the back brake if you need to. The gear lever has a fair throw to it, and you find the snick somewhere in the middle of that throw, so it doesn't kind of snick into the next gear as soon as you click the lever. You put the lever through a little arc and it snicks in during that process. So I'm not trying to say the gear lever action is long or overly long, but there's a definite kind of process to it. We have bar mounted mirrors as opposed to fairing mounted ones. If you get hard on the throttle, they do blur a fair bit, but generally you can see a fair bit of what's going on behind you. It's about 30% arms. I've been giving the bike a bit of a squirt out of some bends, and I think, well, we're weaving out of bends. So I might go and have a little play with the rear preload in a moment and raise that a little bit, since the preload is very easy to access and it's hydraulic, so it shouldn't be too difficult to adjust. The front's got preload as well, and one other adjuster which I think might be compression damping, but don't quote me on that, I'll have to put it on the screen. Oh, now I've got the fuel light on. About 10 miles ago I had about 45 miles in the tank, so all things being equal I think I'd be down to 35 miles now, but the range to empty has gone blank right there. So I'm hoping the range to empty was accurate and I still had 30 odd miles. It's about 6 or 7 to the petrol station. So we should be okay. The seat is feeling comfortable initially, the first 10-15 miles. That's all I've done so far. However, as I noted right back when the bike was first on display at Frasers, there's not an awful lot of room to move backward and forwards. There's a hump for the pillion seat. Yeah, it's not an awful lot of space to scooch back and forth. You feel a bit locked into your position, but not as bad as the BMW S1000 XR. So there you are, there's the preload adjuster. I do not know if it clicks or not, how it works exactly. Since it's a hydraulic, I shouldn't need the engine running or anything. So, oh, I felt a click. I've gone through 2 clicks. There's quite a turn before you find a click. If I go, I'm not sure how many clicks there are, you know. So if I go back, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. I'm getting a little nervous. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16. I'm running out of courage here because I'm not sure how many clicks there are. 16, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21. I can see it moving up and down this collar as well. I might have to do a time lapse. I wasn't really looking at that, but if I do a sped up video, you might see it moving. And I'm not sure how many moves I've gone. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. 1, 2. So I think, well, totally I've lost myself in terms of the preload. That was a complete failure. But we'll ride it, and if it feels a lot stiffer, then we'll stop again and we'll adjust it again. No great shakes, really. Here's something I was a bit surprised about on this bike. Certainly has the power to lift up the front in first gear. The acceleration is pretty brisk, so I need to get it in some bends to find out what the back end feels like now. For that I'll have to wait until nobody in front. It does feel a bit higher though, so I think the preload obviously has done something. Feels like it's lifted the back end up a touch. Yeah, I prefer the slightly higher riding position now. Anyway, let's do some slow speed stuff. Possibly being a little bit cruel to the bike. I'm doing 30 miles an hour in 5th gear, 2000 RPM. It did complain a little bit in 5th about accelerating. It wasn't very shaky, but you can tell it wasn't very happy doing it. 4th is good from 30 miles an hour though. It's the performance or the response is reasonably soft at those revs. Does seem to perk up a little bit after 3000 RPM. Oh dear, it's raining. We were told there'll be showers today, and still I did not dress appropriately. Wearing, as I am, my leather jacket and denim riding jeans. Not a smart choice. But I did notice earlier on that the front wheel, the steering, had a tendency to kind of fall in to bends. But I believe, I think the jaw is out a little bit, but I believe increasing the rear preload has lessened that tendency for the front to drop in. I think it feels more neutral now. Just giving the throttle a little tug to see where it starts picking up. I'm in sport mode, the sportiest throttle map. Yeah, 2,500 RPM. It's just a little slow to accelerate hard. But if I go it to about 3,500, oh yeah. But back down to 2,500. Let's just double check these things. Yeah, just a little muted at 2.5. 3,000. Oh yeah, 3,000 is basically where the fun begins. But also, the power delivery is linear. There isn't a kick at the top, but you wouldn't really expect it from a Moto Guzzi V-twin. but it's got some poke. It's a willing rever. There isn't an excess of power, but you wouldn't expect that from a Moto Guzzi V-twin anyway. It's more about the mid-range. That's where you have your fun on these sorts of bikes, even with the new engine, I think. Now, it hasn't got the stomp of the R1250R or RS, but it's pulling hard enough to open your eyes. What we like on these bouncy roads. Well, I'm not sure where the rear preload is now, although the roads are quite bouncy. The ride is quite controlled. It's very controlled, in fact. Doesn't feel like it's getting out of its depth, although the response is kind of lively. Oh yeah. And also it's happy with clutchless gear changes when you are trying to make some progress. I like it. It's actually good fun on these back roads. No red flags in its performance there at all. Yeah, but you can feel in comparison to the BMW R1250 range, it hasn't quite got the torque or the horsepower, hasn't quite got the same acceleration, but the engine is something like 20% smaller, so you can't really expect it to. But if you're coming from something smaller and have fallen in love with the looks of this bike, because, well, personally I have, and for whatever reason Ducatis don't float your boat, well, so far this bike has been very, very nice to ride. Let's see if we're still weaving out of bends, shall we? Oh no, I think this tightens up. Let's just keep your eyes open. Yeah, I think I've managed to tighten up the rear end now. Now we do have various riding modes. Like I mentioned, I think earlier on, I was in sport. Oh, okay, that's interesting. I was under the impression that the wings, the aerodynamic flaps, or active aero, I thought they didn't come up in sport mode. That's what I read just today. I just looked down as I was slowing down in sport mode, and they were just retracting. So they definitely have come out. Now I think that is something you can configure. So it seems that someone's set this up to bring the wings out in sport mode. Let's see if I can feel the throttle response differences in the different riding modes. I'm in sport, third gear, 4,000 RPM. Quick to respond there. Road, 4,000 RPM. Oh yeah, still pulls hard, but it seems to want a little more throttle twist to get there, to get the same sort of acceleration. Yeah, lowered or slowed the throttle response somewhat. Now on tour, 4,000 RPM. Yeah, I think a bit more again. Seem to need more of a twist of the throttle to get that acceleration. Now, on my BMW, I do have a rain mode, but it only really has an effect in the lower gears. That might be the same here. Rain felt a lot like tour in fourth gear, so it might be just a bit more restrained in like first or second. I can oh, where are we? Let's get the camera down, shall we? I can get my feet down on the ground, almost flat-footed, not quite, but very, very close. The seats are rather narrow as well, so that helps with getting your feet down too. So I've got the camera facing down, and hopefully shortly we'll see the wings activate, or the active aero. Well, I didn't get an exact speed, but I was somewhere north of 40 miles an hour, I think, before they deployed. Now the question is, can I switch mode and get them to retract? And if I do, can I feel a difference? I'm in sport right now. Let's bang it into road. Oh, they're still out. Tour. Ah, they just folded in now and tore. So let's have a little bit of a play, see if we can figure this out. Although I could probably switch the mode over now and see him come out. There you go. So put them into sport. So I'm pretty sure that's not standard behaviour. Retract the flaps. Stop it. I don't think I'm going fast enough to really feel a difference. We're only doing 60. Let's try it though. Yeah, you know what? My thighs do feel a touch colder when the flaps retract. Yeah, it does seem to be a little bit less turbulence on the tops of my legs when I open the flaps up. The jury is currently out on the electronic windscreen. Let me show you now, perhaps, we'll try to. We'll raise the screen, there you go. So here, that's quite noisy. Alright, my crash helmet. I'll bring the screen down. To be fair, actually, that's gone a fair bit quieter. That's quite a lot quieter, I'll be honest with you. But now we have wind blast kind of on the top of our shoulders. So when it's fully up, it does reduce the wind blast on your shoulders, but it is rather noisy for me. Again, my dimensions, 5'7", 170 centimeters. So if you're taller or shorter, you will most likely have a different experience. So this bike is doing chilled out riding pretty well. What is nice, or might be nice for you, is that you do feel the engine working beneath you. It's not smooth like an inline 4. Or even my BMW feels smooth at some revs. There's always a sense of the cylinders doing some work beneath you on this bike. The throttle response thus far has been exemplary, no complaints. Yeah, even at slow speeds I don't notice any shunting around, any surging so far. One thing I will note about the span adjustable levers though is that I have tried to adjust the clutch lever because it comes back a bit too close to the bar for my liking, and with my fingers I can't turn the knob. It's too stiff, so I'm not quite sure why it's as stiff to turn as it is, or whether you actually need a little tool to sit on top of the adjuster, but at least it is adjustable somehow. I will say that the Brembo M4.32 calipers at the front, they've been doing a great job at slowing me down. With a little bit of front dive thrown in, but you know, maybe you can dial that out. Okay, interesting. I have a warning light on the dash, and it's saying ABS. It's flashing very quickly. Let's just turn it off, turn it on again. See if I get a message on the front screen as I turn the bike on. No, they're just flashing normally. Okay. Well, let's ride and see what happens to the ABS light. I think I know what happened. This road is quite bumpy, and it's got some sudden rises and falls. So what I think happened is that both wheels left the ground at some point, and maybe then the back wheel span up, and it didn't quite understand what to make of the speed, the differential between the front and the back wheel. Therefore, it flashed the ABS light. I reckon I got that. I reckon I know what's going on there. I might make it happen again on the way back. So what I'm feeling on this bike is on these B roads at your 7 temps, it's not quite a compliant ride. It's a little fidgety, but that could well be down again to what I've done with the rear preload. Let's turn down that preload a notch. Oh yeah. And the clutch, by the way, not the lightest, but I think very manageable. And once I figured out the biting point, because I think the lever's a bit too close to the bar for me, biting point's a bit early for my liking, but once I figured it out, the clutch take up, the engagement's actually really nice. So, been throwing it about some bends, and it does seem that mid-corner bumps does kind of upset the plot a little bit. But again, I think I need to spend more time on the suspension settings since I've been messing about with them, at least at the back. You know, some people watch motorbike reviews like these and go, why didn't you adjust the suspension? Well, I have adjusted it now, but I'm not sure where it is in the range, and I'm not sure what it's doing to the bike exactly. But yeah, the bike does feel a little rigid and stiff over these bumpy A and B roads at speed. It's not totally composed, but it's far from unmanageable. It's lively. Yes, lively is the right word. Oh, one thing I like about a motorbike is, I haven't mentioned it in a long time really, is like a low tickover speed in first gear. You know, I count a low tickover speed, an impressively low tickover speed, as maybe 5 or 6 miles an hour. That's impressive. This one I think was doing 9, which is at the higher end of first gear tickover experiences that I've had on motorbikes. 7's more than acceptable. 9 just a bit quick for this sort of stop-start traffic. One thing I am noticing with this bike, I think it is a bit susceptible to white lines. It does get a little bit of a wiggle on. Some bikes are less susceptible to white lines and kind of ridges parallel to the direction of travel. This bike seems a little bit perturbed by them. But, you know, that might just be tyres. And the tyres this bike is wearing are... I actually can't tell you, so I'm putting it on the screen for you. I do like the character of this engine though. It does feel alive. It's not smooth. You can just feel it doing stuff. Pretty much all revs. The seat, I've been riding for about 2 hours now, I guess, and the seat has proven to be comfortable so far. We'll take a moment to have a little walk around of the Moto Guzzi V100 Mandello. Now this is a standard version, not the S version, but I think this version actually looks better. I love this colour scheme. But yeah, 1042cc, 115 horsepower,
115 PS, I think, at 8,750 RPM. Torque is 77 foot-pounds. Now, what was that in Newton meters? I think that's 105 Newton meters at 6,750. Well, I think they're saying about 84% of that is available from 3,500 RPM. And that's certainly where it feels like it starts to wake up. Just over 3,000 RPM, you give the throttle a twist and it starts going at a decent rate of knots. So we have a bore and stroke of 96 by 72 millimeters on this 4 valve per cylinder V-twin. It does look like it's about to fall over. I don't think it is, but I will just check the side stand and see if it hasn't sunk into the ground. You know what? It has somewhat. I better save it. The back end of this bike, the go wheel, and the fact that the exhaust is quite short as well, unlike BMW's, shows off that rear wheel, and it looks, for me anyway, bloody gorgeous. I also like the fact that we have built-in provision to mount luggage. That's very useful. You've seen, I think, on the video already, the preload adjuster there, and that certainly has been making a difference. No quick shifter on this bike, not on the standard model. It might be available as an accessory, but it comes as standard on the S model. Big old 320s here in terms of the discs. Are they Brembo? Just having a look. Bear with. Can't see a Brembo symbol anywhere. Anyway, not that it matters. You get good braking. That's what matters. So the rear disc is a good size as well. 280mm with a 2-piston Brembo caliper on the back. And talking of big, look at this rear tyre. 190/55, I think it is. Such a chunky tyre. If anything, this bike is overtired. Overtired. Yeah, 120/70/17 on the front. The wheelbase, 1475 millimeters. Seat height, I've already said 815. I think there's an 800 possibly, and an 835mm seat option as well. But 815 is the standard. 24.7 degrees of rake for the steering, and I think 104 millimeters of trail. So not overly sporty, even though it feels rather sportily set up on the road. The front fork has got preload and rebound adjustment, as well as rebound and a preload on the back too. Now with the Mandello S, I believe you'll have more options to play with in here, because I don't see any sign of connectivity settings. I thought we did have connectivity on this bike, and there's probably a way of accessing it which I haven't found yet. Let's have a look here. So not many cables and wires floating around here, not too messy. I would perhaps be nervous about having a drop, seeing that the hangers are bolted directly to the gearbox here. Slightly nerve-wracking. Don't drop the bike. Mind you, I imagine the cylinders will take the brunt of any fall, so not such a big issue, I imagine. Oh, lovely cardan shaft, as it's called, the shaft drive, and also right-angled valves for the tyres, which is quite handy. So yeah, it's an impressive looking machine up close and from a distance. Should invest in a radiator guard, however. There's some of the best looking rear lights I have ever seen on a motorbike. If someone misses those rear lights, they don't deserve to be on the road, do they really? Unfortunately, the DRL light is flickering on the camera, but it's not flickering in real life. I'll take a photo instead. Right, better stop being so antisocial.
So I mentioned earlier on, I felt a sensation of the front end wanting to kind of turn in, kind of a bit too eagerly. That does seem to be mainly down to that initial preload setting on the shock. And it is much reduced to what I first noticed. It's kind of still there, I think, to some degree, but I've got to admit that my BMW R1250R has a similar feeling, that it wants to flop into bends at slow speeds. So it's this bike is not unique in that regard. And I think it's just a quirk that you can get to live with pretty quickly, if indeed you notice it. Now, £13,500 is not the cheapest bike in this sphere, but maybe you don't like inline fours, in which case your choices are suddenly rather limited. You have got Ducatis, like the Multistradas, or the 950S I think it's called. However, sadly I've not ridden any recent Ducati V-twins, so I cannot comment on them. And then if you've also got something against BMWs, your choices are very limited. Moto Guzzi have come out swinging. They are not messing about. This is not a half-baked effort. I imagine this platform will spawn many derivatives in the coming few years. I think we've already seen prototype shots of a Stelvio model, a more adventure style model. And I've always thought, since seeing that 190 section rear tyre, that there might be a model coming out one day with a bigger engine, with more horsepower and torque than this 1000. If that happens, I'll certainly be interested in seeing what they come up with. Oh, something else I could talk about as well. No real sense of heat coming off the bike, which I think is pretty impressive considering those cylinder heads are right there. So it's been not too hot on this bike. Just here, 3000 RPM, and loving the sound it makes. Think what this bike needs. No, not a louder exhaust. A louder airbox, so you hear more of the induction. I can imagine making this bike moan. Excuse me. So yeah, I think I could take this bike out on a second date, especially with a bigger screen. And maybe the S model. So bigger screen, S model. I reckon that might be something else. So it just remains for me to thank James at Frasers of Gloucester, James, Luke and Ed, sales guys, and all the others for helping me get out on this Moto Guzzi today. So here we are. So if you've got any comments, guys, let me know down below. Any comments or questions, and I'll answer them as best I can. So in the meantime, folks, take care of yourselves, and I'll see you in another video soon. Ta-da!